Welcome back. We are at the penultimate, the second to last power rankings of the season. It's almost done. It's almost done. Next Saturday it will be done. It will not be posted this late at night. It will be posted in the middle of the day because there's no games next Saturday. The regular season ends this coming Friday. So as tiring as today was for me, all I kept thinking was this is the last Saturday and then I can rest a little bit next weekend. So, that being said, we shall plunge in with 1 through 32, starting with number 32. And not much changes at the bottom, as still number 32 is Columbus. 3-6-1 in their last 10. It's the same last 10 they had last week when I was talking about them as well. I do have the last 10 records here as well. And so for Columbus, they're 32nd. I'm tempted to move them up to 31st, but I just can't justify it. And at this point, they are the team that has the best chance at drafting Bedard as we speak. But that's something we'll be looking at definitely leading up to the actual lottery. And in Columbus's case, they could probably use a Bedard. Number one is the Anaheim Ducks. No, this is not the April Fool's Power Rankings anymore. They're number 31 this week. They've lost 10 in a row. Today they lost in overtime, so they're 0-9-1 in their last 10. They dropped one spot from where they were last week, and rightfully so. For the Ducks, it's been a really, really long season. It's almost done. Now, since I did a Ducks video already this week, I'm not sure how to do a 10 losses in a row video on them and make it so it's interesting and whatnot, but I will do my best tomorrow. Tomorrow, of course, being Easter, meaning I'm making videos, because what else would I be doing? So yeah, 31 is Anaheim. Number 30, moving up one spot from last week, kind of by default, which is, the two greatest words in the English language and all that, Chicago. So with the losing that's going on with the Ducks, Chicago, they're 1-9 in their last 10. It's a stellar bottom three. But for Chicago, tonight's loss against Seattle being as it was and everything, but yeah, I didn't see any reason to swap them with the Ducks and move them back to where they were last week. There's really not much reason to do that. So for Chicago, they're playing out the string. We know this. Number 29, dropping one spot from where they were last week, San Jose. So the Sharks moved up 4 spots last week. This week, things kind of, fall back to normal for them. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10 now. The loss today, and of course the losses against the Colorado Avalanche, they can be competitive at times. They can also look lost at others. And again, this is kind of a by design since the trade deadline thing. And again, any of these 4 teams could really use the number 1 draft pick. But again, the good news is the top 5 are all going to be pretty good players, and it is a deep draft. So as long as you get enough picks, you should get some hits this year. Number 28, moving up one spot from last week. Don't let it go to your head, Montreal. So the Habs. The Habs move up one spot from last week. And again, their last 10 games, they are 4-6. Last week, they were 4-6 in their last 10 during that span as well. So pretty consistent and just a little bit below 500. And I do wonder how Montreal's going to do next year. I've talked about it. I do think that they could be one of those teams that have a bit of a bounce back next year. I don't know if it'll be Jersey level. I don't know that anybody can do what New Jersey's done this year, but I don't think it would be Montreal, but who knows, right? Number 28, Montreal this week. Number 27, dropping 2 spots from last week. And 1-7-2 in their last 10, and that's Arizona. And that one win, that's over Anaheim. So, yeah, for the Coyotes, things have gone kind of sideways for them again, but it's after the deadline. These teams will be glad when after next week I don't talk about them for a while, other than in a video on here's how they missed the playoffs, and then they won't get brought up very much at all until we get to the draft and beyond. And which of these teams end up getting better? Arizona, probably another down year for them next year, but there's enough good young players there that Arizona could get competitive next season. But again, we'll see what happens there. Number 26, moving up one spot from last week. So not a huge move up, but Philadelphia moves up one spot. So again, nobody new in the bottom row at this stage. All these were bottom row teams last week. For Philadelphia, they moved past Arizona because Arizona had a rough week more than anything else. And so they're number 26. Number 25, dropping one spot. So a team has dropped into the bottom row, and it's the Caps. The Caps, over their last 10 games, they're now 1-7-2. It feels like that's kind of creeped up sort of out of nowhere, and yet again, at the trade deadline, they made it clear that they were selling. And despite a little bit of a rally after the deadline, it's fallen off precipitously. Also, Ovechkin's goal scoring has dropped off a bit over the last little while too, but that's to be expected. I think it's pretty easy right now to shut the Capitals down. We saw with Florida tonight, the work ethic was there for the Caps. They just didn't have any puck luck, and in the end, Lindgren almost stole them a point, but his giveaway towards the end of the game ended up sealing their fate. Either way, I don't think we would have seen Washington in the next row, even if they'd won that game against the Florida Panthers. All right, so number 24 on the board, moving up 2 spots from last week. Detroit. The Detroit Red Wings, they move out of the bottom row. First time they've been out of the bottom row in a while. They were 26 last week. They're 24 this week. They were 27 the week before that. So, at any rate, Detroit's out of the bottom row. They're playing well. At least they're playing well enough to move out of the bottom row. Trying to play spoiler. They didn't get much done against Pittsburgh, but man, Pittsburgh right now, Islanders, Florida, they're all fighting really hard to get those spots, and Detroit just didn't have enough today to slow down Pittsburgh. Number 23, and the same spot as last week, Vancouver. So the Vancouver Canucks, number 23 this week, same as last week, and for them, their last 10 games, they're 5-3-2, and yeah, it's just they're playing out the string. Can they finish above 500? We shall see. I think that's the aim at this point. Also talking, of course, wanting to see, that work ethic and that 60-minute game. And for the Canucks, that's been a little bit elusive at times, like the third period tonight against Calgary being another example. But you have to kind of put an asterisk there and say, well, the game meant something to Calgary, so they probably should have been playing that way the whole time. Number 22, same spot as last week. So no change here with St. Louis being number 22 on the board. Again, they're almost exactly the same spot mathematically as the Canucks. Like, their record has been very similar. Their last 10 games are 6-3-1, so they're a little bit better over their last 10, so they keep a little bit of an edge on Vancouver. St. Louis almost came back against Minnesota, but it was an almost, so you don't move them up because of almosts. But yeah, they're at least trying to play spoiler down the stretch. Speaking of which, number 21, dropping 3 spots from last week. Their season is officially done in terms of playoff runs. The Ottawa Senators. So they're number 21 on the board. And for the Sens setbacks this week, they're now 4-4-2 in their last 10 games. So it's just it hasn't been the kind of finish that I think they would have wanted. It has not helped that there have been some key injuries the entire way through the season. And so in the offseason, it's about acquiring depth and making sure your contracts are all in line and coming up with a really good structure for the team. And if that means a change in coaching, a change in approach, whatever it means, they need to do it, because this is a good, talented young team that should be in the playoffs if everything had worked out this year. It just didn't. Number 20, same spot as last week. They're now 5-5 in their last 10, and that's Nashville. So Nashville, number 20. And really, it is tonight's game. Tonight's game against Winnipeg Jets. Hellebuck steals it. They can't get the goal there. And it is that inconsistency from game to game for Nashville that keeps them in the same spot at number 20. Some inspiring results down the stretch. And I'm going to say this in Nashville's favor. The fact that they sold at the deadline and the record kind of got better after selling at the deadline. And I think it was just the uncertainty was gone. I think that bodes well for them next year. I think Nashville can have a bounce back. I think St. Louis can as well. Those are 2 teams that I'm looking at next year and saying they should be back in the playoff hunt, especially St. Louis. I think with the right moves this summer, they can both get above the line. Number 19, moving up 2 spots from last week, Buffalo. So the Sabres, I'm almost guaranteeing that there'll be those in Buffalo fandom who look at their 6-3-1 record in their last 10 and think they should be higher. I did see that last week, but again, for Buffalo, their playoff hopes are almost done, and I felt like the top 16 teams should be the playoff teams at this point in the season. Also, for Buffalo, they've naturally ended up 19th. I'm not suppressing them on any level. But yeah, so Buffalo 19th on the board, but they've moved up, and the fact that they're playing games that matter in April is a huge step forward for this organization. So even if, and it's highly likely they miss the playoffs, even if the playoffs are not in the offing this year, there's a lot to build on here. Devin Levi getting some experience down the stretch to go into next year with, and whatever they decide to do from here, it should be very interesting. But goaltending's the number one thing I'm going to watch with Buffalo, because if the face with Levi and not with Luukkonen, then you got to kind of make a move next year. Craig Anderson's career is probably at an end. I don't think Comrie's the answer either, so it'll be interesting to see what they do. Number 18, dropping one spot from last week. And, Pittsburgh's playing well. They're playing well. They're 6-4 over their last 10. They just got passed this week. And again, for Pittsburgh, they get the win today. And then the Islanders and the Panthers answer, and they get wins as well. So it is down to that last couple of games to decide who's going to get in the East. Pittsburgh still has that chance. Crosby getting to 1,500 points today, that definitely warrants a video. Videos aplenty, apparently, because McDavid gets to 150 points on the season. So there has to be a Crosby video, a McDavid video. Boston's tied a record. Tomorrow they have a chance to pass that record for wins. Could be a lot of videos over the next couple of days about people reaching milestones. But yeah, Pittsburgh at number 18, and they still have that chance. They're still in it. Number 17, and moving up one spot from last week. They had a decent week, but in the end for Calgary, they are 1 point back of a playoff spot. 1 point back, same as Pittsburgh. So that 1 point back definitely puts Calgary in a position where they need a little bit of help. They need to win. They have a game coming up against Nashville on Monday. They have to win that. Now for Nashville at this point, they're hoping for Winnipeg to lose out, and they got to play spoiler, and they got to help themselves, and they also have to pull Calgary further out of that hunt. So the Calgary-Nashville game could be a really nasty one when we get to that. So yeah, for the Penguins, dropping 2 spots from last week. For Calgary, moving up 1 spot from last week. Just trying to keep all this straight here. I had the wrong number down here. So number 16. It's been a long day, so it doesn't surprise me I have the wrong number down there. Number 16, and moving up 3 spots from last week. They're 6-4 in their last 10. Winnipeg. The Jets, that was a game that, again, did Hellebuck steal it? Yes, but not as much as the games in Florida. It does feel like Winnipeg's starting to get things rolling, and it's exactly the right time, because if Winnipeg wants to make the playoffs, they have to win these games. They won a game they had to tonight against a team they had to beat, and now Winnipeg has it's in their hands, and that's really all you can ask for at this time of year, is to have your fate in your own hands. They don't have a chance to move up past that number 2 wildcard spot. Seattle has kind of pulled away from them there. But being 6-4 in their last 10 means they don't have to worry about Nashville or Calgary as much. Again, they're only 1 point ahead of Calgary at this point. Number 15, dropping 4 spots from last week. And I honestly consider dropping them further, to be completely honest. Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, it is going to be interesting to see in a week's time when I post a poll on the channel, Toronto and Tampa Bay, who's going to win. Because right now, Toronto is playing much better hockey than the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I don't know that it's close. So the expectation is going to be one of, Tampa will just turn it on in the playoffs, and I'm not sure they can. Now, of course, Brian Elliott was in net tonight, but, still, they allowed 7 goals tonight, and Tampa Bay just looks kind of, they're backing their way into the playoffs. Usually teams that back their way into the playoffs don't go very far in said playoffs. Can Tampa Bay buck that? If anybody can, it might be Tampa, but again, we'll see where the Bolts end up. Number 14, moving up 1 spot from last week, New York Islanders. So one of the benefits of Tampa Bay moving down is this moves some teams up. The Islanders move up 1 spot from last week. They're playing well. I mentioned in the recap, we'll mention it here as well, Horvat, I think, is playing well. He's not getting the goals, but Horvat's not all about goals. I think with Vancouver this year, he just had so many goals that were kind of getting spoiled with the goals. He's about the faceoffs. He's about the defensive play as well. So for the Islanders right now, things are, I think, going well in part because of Horvat. He's doing what he has to do, tonight being another example of that. And of course, Ilya Sorokin in net. We got a goalie who every 4 games gets a shutout. That tends to help as well. So the number 14. Number 13, moving up 1 spot from last week as well, Seattle. So Seattle, 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. They're playing very well, and they've pulled themselves within 2 points of a sliding LA Kings team. And if they catch them and they move into 3rd place, that kind of throws everything into, chaos, because we had all been expecting likely Edmonton and LA, although Edmonton could catch Vegas. It's not likely at this point, but they still could catch Vegas. And we could end up seeing completely different matchups than we expected, because we've been expecting the Oilers and the Kings for about the last month. That looked like that's how it was going to work out. Number 12, also moving up 1 spot from last week. They are 6-4 in their last 10 games, and that's Florida. Florida's gotten hot at the exact right time. I mentioned not too long ago that if they hadn't lost those games that they lost, then who knows where they would be, right? So the Florida Panthers find themselves in the same situation as Winnipeg. They're basically their fate's in their own hands, and they're playing so well right now. Matthew Tkachuk playing fantastic, and Alex Lyon has become such a good story. So when we talk about unsung heroes, I would think the one for Florida kind of has to be Alex Lyon, and I may do a video on that too once we get to the end of the regular season on unsung heroes. Pick one from each team, all that fun stuff. But yeah, Florida number 12. Number 11, dropping 4 spots from last week, Minnesota. Now, they got the win today over St. Louis, which is great, but it kind of feels like in the week running up to tonight, things have gone a little bit off the rails for them, and now, because that race is so hot in the Central all of a sudden, they're likely to end up finishing 3rd. So, if they end up finishing 3rd and they're on the road, and I'm already kind of feeling bad. I'm already feeling that, not again, kind of feeling about Minnesota, where it looks like things are going well, and this could be the year that they break through. And if they end up being on the road to start the playoffs against Dallas, I don't know. I don't know if they can beat Dallas. We'll see. It would be a matchup then between, one of my wife's favorite teams, one of my favorite teams. The good news is we get along with each other and we're not competitive that way. As long as the teams are all fair and everything goes well, we're still friends after. So Minnesota, number 11 this week, they just dropped out of the top 10. They are sporting a 6-2-2 record over their last 10. And one of the top 10 teams here, and they're number 10 this week, they stay in the same spot as Carolina. So last week, Carolina took a big dive on the top 10, or to the bottom of the top 10, being 5-4-1 in their last 10. Well, now they're 4-5-1 in their last 10. So I had debated about Minnesota 10th or Carolina 10th, and I opted to leave Carolina in 10th. But yeah, this coming week, they've got to get it going. It's interesting because both Carolina and Tampa, it feels kind of the same, that they should be playing better, and for whatever reason they're not. And so they're not pulling themselves further ahead. Like last week, I saw a lot of comments like, oh, look how many Western teams are in the top 8. This is ridiculous. Teams in the East that are at the top generally have not been playing like teams that are at the top of the East. There have been, between Tampa Bay and Carolina especially, teams that just, it's not there right now. At number 9 this week, a team that's dropping, I think it's the number 1 drop of the week. Yeah, it is. Dropping 5 spots from last week, the LA Kings. So the Kings are out of the top row. Tough week for them. And tonight I kind of felt bad for them because, fluke goals against Colorado. Puck's not going in the net for them. Controversy at the end of that game. And a game that they rightfully probably should have won, but they didn't. And just some struggles this week and struggles over the last couple of weeks. They're now 5-5 in their last 10. Last week when I did this, they were 6-2-2 in their last 10. So it's kind of fallen for them. But there's still another week left to get some of it back. The other thing is that LA now almost guaranteed to be playing on the road. So it feels similar between LA and Minnesota right now, that they both had hopes for a division title, and now it looks like that's probably faded, and they might be looking at an early exit from the playoffs, but we'll see. Because this year, we could see some upsets. We didn't see that last year. Number 8, moving up 4 spots from last week, See, I'm not always mean to Dallas. Dallas is playing really well. Dallas is playing good hockey right now. Getting Wedgwood back helps. Ottinger was fantastic today. If Dallas is playing well, they're getting wins, they move up the board. And right now, Dallas is playing well. So they move up 4 spots. It was between Dallas or the Rangers what I was going to wear tonight. And I thought, well, I'll go with the Rangers. I wore Dallas earlier today. So yeah, Dallas ends up at number 8. They're back in the top row. They're getting things together at the right time of the year. Robertson's heated up again. That's great news for Dallas fans and for the team. Number 7, moving up 2 spots from last week. But I have to say right now, New Jersey, they're in the top row. We'll see how things go for them come playoff time. Again, they move up 2 spots. They are 5-4-1 over their last 10. They lose against Boston tonight, but I don't fault teams for losing against Boston. So last week the 10-game record was 4-4-2, and now it is 5-4-1. So if you take away that Boston game, it's 5-3-1. And so yeah, they gave Boston a pretty good fight, pretty much literally throughout that game. And that's the kind of hockey they're going to have to play if they're going to win in the playoffs. The playoffs are going to be tough, but it had to be frustrating for them too because knowing that Carolina had lost earlier in the day, if they had a win, they would have been first in the division. But they didn't get that, so we'll see how things go for them from here. Number 6, same spot as last week. So Toronto, you're number 6. And again, if you look at the relation of where they are, comparatively speaking with the team they will play in the first round and they will have home ice advantage against Tampa, they are in really good shape right now. So again, we'll see if that stays true and if that means anything come playoff time. That's why I don't do power rankings during the playoffs because it's a regular season rankings. So Toronto stays in the same spot as last week. They are 5-3-2 in their last 10. That's what their record was last week through their last 10. So pretty remarkably consistent there. They avoid the dreaded trap game tonight against Montreal and annihilate the Montreal Canadiens, which I guess if you're on Bedard watching Montreal, you might be, happy about that. But at any rate, yeah, number 6, Toronto. Number 5 on the board. Same spot as last week as well. So no change here. It's Vegas. The Vegas Golden Knights playing well, especially considering, today they were without Eichel. They are going to have a goaltending controversy going into the playoffs because it looks like Logan Thompson might be ready to go for the start of the playoffs. So you'll have Thompson, Brossoit, you'll have Quick, and maybe Aiden Hill in the mix as well, right? So as 4 goalies. And so, yeah, we'll see what Vegas does. I'm thinking Thompson's the starter for game 1. I'm thinking Quick probably ends up being the backup. Because that, to me, is what makes the most sense, right? So if Thompson struggles, then you can go to Quick. Quick has shown, even in recent history, that he can still get it done in the playoffs. He can still play well. He did last year against Edmonton. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with Vegas over the next week as the goalie conundrum is going to be on their minds. Number 4, moving up 4 spots from last week. So, pretty good week for the Rangers. They're 6-2-2 in their last 10. Vegas is 6-1-3 in their last 10. But the Rangers take a nice healthy jump. I think the Rangers are playing really, really well. I think they're firing on all cylinders right now. And so with Shesterkin also starting to rack up shutouts and his save percentage is getting better, they're getting hot at the exact wrong time. If you are a fan of a team they might play in the first round, whether that be Carolina or New Jersey, we still don't know yet. But for the Rangers, they've settled in, and I think that they're going to be a tough out. I really think they're going to be a tough out. I'm leaning towards them against New Jersey or Carolina right now. The board kind of gives you an idea of who I'm likely to take in the first round of the playoffs this year because I'm looking at which teams are playing well going into the playoffs. So that'll give you a good idea of where I'm likely leaning. Number 3 on the board. Same spot as last week. They're 8-2 in their last 10, and that's Colorado. For the Avs, again, did they get some luck tonight against LA? Yep. But teams do that. That happens. It's just part of sports where sometimes the team that's lucky ends up getting that win, right? So for Colorado, they're playing very well. 8-2 over their last 10. I have no reason to bump them down. There just isn't any. So they're first in the division. I think that's probably where they end up, but they're tied in points with Dallas. They've just got the tiebreaker there. Number 2 on the board. They're almost number 1. Edmonton's as close to number one as you can get. In a normal season, Edmonton would be number one right now with how they're playing. They've got a ridiculous point streak going that I thought might end today because San Jose, that could be a trap game. Nope. So, yeah, they're number two. They're 9-0-1 in their last 10. They've got, what, a 58 game point streak. It's ridiculous right now. They are playing extremely well. This is a team that, yeah, in the first round, they're going to be very, very difficult to put out. So, yeah, and I mean, the goaltending's been quite good. The addition of Ekholm's been absolutely brilliant. I like what the Oilers have going on right now. So that means in number one, and they would have been number two if they'd lost today. Like, if Boston had just been a team that lost a game today against the New Jersey Devils, I could have said, you know what, right now, Boston drops to number two. And I honestly would have believed that. I honestly would have been able to stand here and sell that. And then they beat New Jersey, and I'm like, they've won 62 games. They've tied an all-time record. I can't move them out of first. People have asked when the last time was that a team was stapled to first place, and I think it was Tampa Bay in 2019, going into those playoffs. Although Colorado was first a lot last year. Colorado spent a lot of time in first last year, and then, of course, they ended up winning the Cup. So the President's Trophy curse is seen as a thing, and I understand why it's there. And every year people will say the same thing of, hey, President's Trophy winners do win the championships. That doesn't mean anything. But the expectations are going to be that there'll be an upset with Boston. And one thing that gets me is when I hear people saying, well, Boston will just cruise through the first round. Did we not learn from 2019? Did we not learn from that? Did we learn nothing from 1989 when the Vancouver Canucks were against a Calgary team that finished like 800 points ahead of them and took them to overtime in Game 7? Playoffs are a whole different beast. That's why I don't gloat about Boston's record. It has been so much fun to watch them play, but it's the regular season. So I have to temper my expectations, and at this point, Boston, I've got my fingers crossed that they can come through and do just as well in the playoffs as they've done in the regular season. But history tells me that's very, very difficult. So there you go. Power rankings for this week. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.